Welcome, I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts with the objective of improving your management skills and growing your business. You're going to want to take some notes today, so pause the video right now if you don't already have a notepad and a pen handy, and then make a commitment that you will jot down some notes, jot down some kind of action item that you can implement in your business today. You should make a commitment to do that each and every day because this is what it's all about. You have to implement, drive your business forward. Are you familiar with this concept of differentiation? Now, not just the word, I mean as it relates to business and evaluation of your people. This, I think, was made most famous by Jack Welch, and it was chronicled in his book, Winning. And it was very controversial, I think, at least from the people I interacted with. I found that it had controversy surrounding it. The idea is this. In differentiation, it's, as I say, a means of evaluating your people, but what you're essentially doing is you are measuring them and you are ranking them. And the idea is that you're trying to gain a picture for yourself and for everyone quite transparently that will expose where people fall in the order of things. So he would divide things into what he would refer to as the top 20%, the middle 70%, and the bottom 10%. And the idea is you would eliminate the bottom 10% on an ongoing basis. And so you'd never want to be, if you were on that team, you'd never want to be in the bottom 10% insofar as you appreciated job security. And I guess that's where the controversy would come about, is that people might think that it's cold. And that's where he gained his name, Neutron Jack. And also in Canada, there's a large automotive group, the Jim Pattison Automotive Group, and they were rumored to practice this in some way. I heard it said that they would eliminate the bottom 2 salespeople on any given month. And I can't verify whether that's accurate or not. There's probably some truth, there's an element of truth to it probably. I always was incredulous as to or suspicious of how the practice would carry out in real life, in real world terms, because I would ask myself questions like, well, you could just understand that the boss would never want to eliminate someone who happens to fall in the bottom 10% out of, something that's out of the ordinary. And so I'd be like, well, there's got to be some caveats. There's got to be some kind of conditions that apply. It's not just straight, cut and dried, straightforward, where every single month the bottom 2 people in that example of that automotive group were fired. I never really believed that. And so these were the concepts that were explored. Now, if this stuff seems like, well, this isn't really relevant to your business, stick around, because first thing I want you to do at the beginning here, maybe pause and just give some reflection on whether this concept sounds good to you. And I'm going to elaborate on it. But so far, ranking your people and transparently letting everyone know who's in the top 20%, who's in the middle 70%, and who's in the bottom 10%, and making a commitment to eliminate the bottom 10% so that you can recruit new talent on an ongoing basis. How do you feel about that? Sort of evaluate that for yourself and say on a scale of 1 to 10 whether you think there's any merit there for your business or for businesses in general. Maybe your business, you don't see quite yet how this might have some merit, but I want you to think of maybe another business and ask yourself, do you think there's any value there? And then at the end of the video, I want you to think about it again and see if I'm not going to try to convince you. I guess spoiler alert, I think there is merit here, but again, there are conditions that have to apply. So as we discuss this, I want you to reevaluate at the end of the video and see if I've persuaded you at all that this might be something that even if right now you're feeling it doesn't have much merit for your business, maybe in fact that it should. And here's why. Think about it, really. What do you believe in? How do you compensate your people? We like to say at BMI that we believe in commensurate value exchange. This is just a way of saying that we want to reward and remunerate our people in proportion to the value they bring to the company. Isn't that what everybody should want? Is that there's a fair and balanced value exchange between a team member and the organization that employs him? If you believe in that, it's like, okay, well, if so, then where does that take you? You have to find a way of evaluating people. And I continuously talk about the importance of report cards. This is just a performance analytics. This is just a way, and we've talked about report cards for the overall organization, report cards for an individual department, and report cards for individuals, every individual within a department. Therefore, everyone within an organization should have some performance analytics, some sort of report card, something that is transparent both to the individual being evaluated and to his supervisor and perhaps HR, and maybe even people beyond that, maybe to the whole organization. There's maybe an argument to be made whether that's a good idea or not. But everyone should have this report card. And if you don't have that, then how could you engage in commensurate value exchange? You would always have this situation in which you're like, well, I made an offer, a job offer to someone, they agreed for the terms that we had, and of course there is some sort of measure of value exchange. I mean, a person wouldn't accept, he's not forced to work for you, so he wouldn't accept the terms and conditions and the pay plan that you laid out if it wasn't at least momentarily acceptable. And so you could argue, okay, well, that's all I need to know. But as people get better and as they develop skills and specialized knowledge within your organization, perhaps they contribute more value. And how do you know whether it's time to increase the value you give them, i.e. the pay, some kind of benefits? How do you know when you're doing enough? And someone would argue, well, if somebody stays, then that's all you need to know. But you don't want to get burned where somebody's very important to you, and hopefully all of your people are very important to you, ends up leaving and surprising you, and you have to start over. And so I think there's some merit in somebody saying, well, to the degree that somebody accepts employment and then stays and doesn't quit, then you can rest assured that there is at least some measure of commensurate value exchange that's fairly close to accurate, fairly close to balanced. That's true, however, it's really reactive. And so I would impress upon you the importance of creating a more proactive means of knowing this, so that ahead of time you can proactively increase people's compensation and give them more money and make sure that you're treating people fairly so that you don't end up losing somebody and having some catastrophic event where you are left scrambling trying to find and acquire talent, which is very difficult to do. So that's the first concept to kind of wrap your mind around here with the concept of differentiation. The next thing to consider is whether or not you believe in a meritocracy. And of course, we've talked before that to the victor go the spoils is a good idea, and that you shouldn't just be based on favoritism, based on some kind of perception that isn't founded in data or reality, that you are giving people special treatment. We've said you shouldn't treat all your people the same. You should not believe in equal treatment or egalitarianism, which is equal outcomes. Instead, what you should believe in is equal opportunity. You want to put a level playing field in place for people to thrive. You want to fulfill your obligations and give them all they need to be successful, and then let people acting in their own self-interest try to thrive within that environment. And as is the case with everyone and everywhere in the world, some people will shine. And that might be an indication of how closely aligned their interests are with yours, or how closely aligned their strengths are with their role description. There's all sorts of reasons. It can be as simple as somebody is just more talented. Somebody just has more inherent gifts that contribute more value. And to the degree that somebody does contribute more value for whatever reason, including just inherent talent and skills that they bring to the table, you should be rewarding them more. That's just natural. That's how things should work. And people expect that. And so do you. You look at it and you think to yourself, if you're contributing more value in any situation throughout your life, whether you actually did receive more in exchange or did not, there was part of you that was thinking, well, I'm contributing more, and therefore it may not be pay, in some way I should be getting more back from this situation. I'm putting in more, I'm a better return, I should get a better return on my investment. And maybe it is more recognition, more responsibility, or anything like that. But this is just naturally how people are, is that there is an expectation that they be given things back in proportion to what they contribute. So you want to think about that. It's like, okay, well, not only do I need to measure my people in some way to find out how much value that they are contributing, you also need to rank them in order to be able to differentiate between one and another, to see which ones are contributing the most, because those are the ones that should get the most. And let's say there's a finite amount of resources that you can give back in terms of pay and financial resources or recognition, perks, benefits, and whatever. The degree to which that is finite will determine that you need to rank and decide who is going to get the lion's share of that and who's going to get less. So that's where this concept of differentiation comes in. So first, we're saying you have to measure. Second, we're saying you have to rank in order to know how to engage in commensurate value exchange and a meritocracy. If both of those concepts seem reasonable to you, then there's only one last component to this that you have to wrap your head around for the big picture of differentiation, and that is this idea that you are going to eliminate those who are in the lowest 10%. And I think what causes the controversy and what causes people to give pause at this moment is you might think of it as cruel. Well, I don't want to fire anyone. I hate the idea of taking away someone's livelihood. But if you reframe that in the context of why are they in the lowest 10%, and you start to ask yourself that question, you might come up with an idea that perhaps there's just a poor fit. Perhaps there is bad attitude. I've seen all sorts of reasons for why people struggle. And sometimes it could be things that are beyond their control. Often what it is the person's just not a good fit. And if you think that you are being more charitable by allowing them to struggle, where everyone around them and their boss and themselves and their family sees that they're struggling, they're probably not enjoying themselves. I don't see that as very charitable. Instead, I think you want to help them land on their feet, and you're probably creating an opportunity by letting them know transparently, this is just not working out. This does not seem to be the right fit for you. This isn't the right role for you. And maybe there's something else in your organization in which they can succeed. Or maybe another organization entirely. That's probable. If you reframe it, you can think of it as the more compassionate and merciful thing to do by allowing someone to go out. Maybe they are never going to do that on their own. It's just not in their nature. They're going to hang on because they value security above everything else, but they'll find somewhere else where they can be more successful. So those are the three concepts. So I actually not really met. I went to the World Business Forum in Manhattan. It was hosted at Radio City Music Hall, and Jack Welch was one of the keynote speakers. And when the time came for question and answers, I was the first out of my seat and got to the microphone first. And I asked him about differentiation. And I wanted to know about some details about it all. I wanted to know, because I'd already tried to implement this with a management team at the time, and it wasn't going over well. And I really needed the details. So I started asking him details about, okay, so is this on any given month, whoever is in the lowest 10% must go? Or is it the year to date? On a particular month, are you looking at the previous month's results? What data are you looking at? I started quizzing him and everything, and his response to me was that they're gonna start calling you Neutron Jack, and everybody laughed and everything. But I realized coming out of that experience that the details do matter, and that's where the controversy is. So if you're thinking of implementing something some sort of differentiation in your organization, or you're considering evaluating this as whether or not this is a good idea for organizations in general, the details do matter. So going back a moment here, I started with really good report cards, really good data, and then you got to start ranking it and letting people know. And it's a little uncomfortable for people to be told that, well, you're, number 6 out of 8, or you are 8 out of 8. That can be very uncomfortable. When we talked about performance evaluations, performance reviews, performance analytics, and report cards in the past, we talk about the importance of having accurate data on the report card as well as relevance. And that is the controversy I ran into. When I got pushback from my team, it was always surrounding one of those two things. Like, no, this is not right. The number showing here, where did that number come from? I disagree with that. That is not accurate. And so we would work to improve that. And I would never let somebody go based on any sort of data that is called into question and may not be accurate. The second thing was relevance. It's like, why are you measuring me on this particular performance metric? Why is that important? I don't get paid for that. It's you didn't hire me on that. It's not my role description or whatever. And if somebody makes a compelling case about that, we would say, yeah, that doesn't belong there either. So the idea of differentiation as a whole needs to relate back to these finer details. And then you have to ask yourself, like things that I gave you examples a moment ago about, is this on a year-to-date basis? Is it every month, every quarterly? How often do you review? Is it once per year at the beginning of the year where you do this and you take the bottom 10% and let them go? The key, though, is a merciful and compassionate thing to do is to make sure it's completely transparent, nobody's caught off guard. That way they can come forward and dispute anything where the data is inaccurate, or they dispute the accuracy of it, and you can discuss it, or the relevance, and you can monitor that kind of stuff and improve it over time. You have an obligation to your business and to all those stakeholders, including the people we're talking about who may be differentiated, to make the business successful. And Jack Welch likes to say that he who or they who field the best team will win. And you think of it that way in your business, that whatever team you are able to assemble, you're looking for talent acquisition, you are recruiting people, you're developing them, and when you develop the best team, you're going to have a very successful business. There is this perhaps unhappy or unfortunate situation where you sometimes end up with people who are not going to perform and meet or exceed expectations. They are going to underperform, and you perhaps made a poor hiring decision. And it is, if you want to make sure that your business succeeds, and that's what those listeners of mine should be wanting to make sure the business succeed, you want to be effective as a manager, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you've got to have a good team. You are going to, at any given time, have some weaker elements to your team. There is one really important thing that I learned from all this. I thought to myself, as long as I have a team member who is improving, I don't care how low they rank. If they're the lowest on the differentiation score, but they're improving month over month and year over year, as long as they're on an upward trajectory, they have a place on my team. And I would really strongly recommend that you fit that in. I don't believe the concept that you should eliminate someone because they're not improving, or simply because they're in the lowest 10% if they're improving. Now, I can appreciate if the improvement is so small, the increments of improvement are barely noticeable, then you might be splitting hairs there. I think if there is meaningful improvement, then we've seen, and you've probably experienced in life where throughout your career, where somebody was a bit of a slow starter, but given the right environment, given the right support, all of a sudden they began to shine, and allow for that possibility. Differentiation is effective insofar as it forces managers to face the truth, where there is somebody that they're just avoiding out of their own, they think they're doing the right thing, or they think that they're a nice person, and it would be not nice to let somebody go. And differentiation forces a person to go back to that and reconsider and say, you know what, I don't think I'm being fair to my business, to the people that are relying on this person, or even to that person by keeping them here. The numbers make it clear that they are continuing to struggle, and I need to do something about that. Also, in the example I gave of my very first run at differentiation, I was ensuring that I was practicing that within people who had very similar role descriptions. And that made it easier, so I could have a report card that was essentially the same for everyone, give or take maybe a performance metric here or there that needed to be tweaked from one to another. Other than that, they sort of followed the same things. And you want to make sure that there's this opportunity for, like we talked about with accuracy and relevance, and discussing with your people what goes on that report card. But what I'm getting at now is what happens, what do you do when people have very differing role descriptions? Like maybe you have a small organization, there's only 5 of you, or there's 10 in your organization, maybe even fewer, maybe there's only a couple of people. I don't think differentiation is really for you if there's only a couple people in your organization. But certainly report cards still are relevant. But let's just look at the idea of if you have very different job descriptions, role descriptions for say 10 people in an organization. How do you know that you're ranking them correctly? You may say to me, well, Michael, I get the report card thing. I believe in measuring people, but how do I rank them? It does become a little bit more difficult, but it's not impossible. You need to start to look at, well, how do you value certain individuals in the organization relative to one another? How is it that they are adding value? We're talking about commensurate value exchange. How is it that they add value to the organization? And we don't have time to discuss that right now. If you reach out to my organization and you want some assistance with that because you like the idea and you want to make sure that you're always getting a better and better team over time, and you want to implement some differentiation, we can help to make sure that you're assigning some fair metrics. But if role descriptions are very, very different, I would caution you, and I would be very careful proceeding with differentiation between people that are doing very different roles. You should maybe do it, but don't be so committed to eliminating somebody when they may show as they're ranked lower and they are in the lowest 10%, and you say, well, I'm just going to follow the rules, lowest 10% has to go, so I will let them go, because there are some roles that you don't expect as much of. There are some introductory positions, entry-level positions, which they just don't create as much value, they're not expected, and if you had a good report card and a good way of ranking, it might just show that. And you might say, yeah, but that's what's expected. There's still a commensurate value exchange there, and I'm not giving as many perks and benefits to that person, but they don't have to go. That, you know, they might be doing a wonderful job in the role that they fill. So just, I wanted to make that caution that it is not impossible, but certainly within higher ranking people in your organization, let's use the same example. If you have 10 managers and they have really different jobs that they're doing, and so their role description on a day-to-day basis, what tasks they do might be very different, you should still be considering differentiation for them and ranking them, because the larger an organization gets, the more I think valuable this kind of thing is, causing the executives and those people at the top leaders, and you as a business owner to consider whether or not the people that are ranking the lowest on a consistent basis, who are not improving, should be in your organization. And most often the answer is probably no. Bear in mind that theoretically you may never have a situation where a person is in the bottom 10% and not improving, and the bottom 10% could be transient. There can always be people that are going up, you know, maybe they're newer in the organization. That's another thing I didn't really bring up, but when somebody's new, I would take that into consideration. There would be a probationary period in which that we don't look at whether they're in the bottom 10% as you know, really a red flag or something that we'd have to deal with. But after a certain length of time, they now are with the rest of the organization, and there's an expectation that they improve. But what I was getting at before is that you may never have a situation where a person needs to be let go because there are always improvements, and some people are moving up and they're performing really well, and then there are peaks and there are valleys in business. The person might later on not perform as well and somebody else is trying hard. In practical terms, I don't think that happens, but theoretically that can happen, where you are always having different people climbing to the top. And if you have superstars in your organization, a lot of high performing people, I suppose that might happen. Generally speaking though, differentiation is a really good concept for highlighting to management that there are people that you maybe want to take off of the team and be recruiting to replace them. And we focus on that, and that is not where we should focus. That's not what it's really about. It's about the meritocracy and making sure with your finite resources that you spend the time to the victor go the spoils. Make sure that you spend the time giving special treatment, recognition, celebrating the successes of those top 20%, because that is another area in which managers fail. They fail to recognize that someone is really a superstar and performing very well. And those people within the middle 70, they are the heart of your organization. That's the basis of what keeps your business alive. And therefore, you want to treat them well, but they're not entitled to all the perks of the superstars, and they probably will work. There will be people within the 70% middle. Some of them are on their way up, getting into the top 20%, and they see what it means to be in the top 20%, and they're aspiring to do that, and you're providing them the resources and training and tools and the things that they need to be able to do that, while others, maybe over time, for whatever reason, starting to work their way down towards that bottom 10%. That, I guess, is it in a nutshell. That's kind of the concept of differentiation, whether you believe in it or not. I said I'd get you to reevaluate. So just before you do reevaluate and compare your number to what you said at the beginning of this, think again. Do you believe in commensurate value exchange? Do you believe to try to have some proportionate or balanced value of what your people give your business and what your business gives them? I hope you agree to that. Secondly, do you believe that it's important for management and the team itself to know the ranking of where people fall in the organization? Do you believe in the transparency so that you can dedicate your finite resources appropriately to making sure that you're giving some extra perks to those superstars, to those people that are most important to your organization? That's the second component. Do you believe that it may be the most compassionate, merciful thing to do to ask people to move on if consistently they are not improving and they're showing in the lowest 10% of your organization? Remember, in an organization of 10, that's one person. 9 people are completely safe. One person is just struggling a little bit here. That's it in a nutshell. And then we talked about the transparency, the key for making sure that you have mechanisms and open communication so that people have a right to talk about how we're being evaluated. And if they make a good, compelling case, like they're contributing to how the report cards work, the relevancy and the accuracy of the data, and making sure that you're not just making this stuff up. It's not just being dictated by the boss. That, I think, is where all the controversies surround the rumors of how this worked and everything was that, well, the boss just says who his favorites are, and then you, if you're not, kissing butt or whatever the case may be, you'll end up in the bottom 10%. That, I would never endorse that form of differentiation. That would be an absolute critical thing. It would kill your organization instead of supporting it and driving it forward. So now go ahead and pause the video once again and sort of reevaluate and give a score. Do you think maybe there's greater merit here? How could you use, if not all of this concept of differentiation, how could you use this in your organization to drive things forward? Leave a comment and let me know what you think about all of this. And did I leave something out completely? Sometimes after I finish recording these, I think, I completely forgot this particular point here, and I wonder if people, and then I might make a follow-up video or whatever. But if you tell me there's something that's really unclear, the way I asked Jack Welch about some things that were unclear to me after reading his book, then I will elaborate on the concept for you. And maybe somebody else in our community and some other viewer might read your comment and learn from it. We need to learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.